It wasn't the hospital that changed me. It was the experience of being alone, of being forced to listen to the whispers of my soul. I had no distractions, no excuses. I was left to face myself, and in doing so, I discovered parts of me I never knew existed. Being alone in that hospital bed felt like an eternity. Yet, in the quiet, I found peace, peace that was always there, but had been hidden beneath the noise of everyday life. I had always been afraid of being vulnerable, of truly facing my own pain, but in that hospital room, I had no choice. I realized that vulnerability wasn't a weakness, it was my greatest strength. Time felt suspended in that room. The world outside continued its frantic pace, but I was frozen in place, unable to move, yet somehow being reshaped by the very stillness I feared. In those moments alone, I began to truly question my life's direction. What had I been chasing all these years? Was it worth it? The answers began to come, slowly but surely, and they changed me forever. I had always thought I was strong enough to face anything, but in that hospital bed, I discovered that real strength lies not in physical endurance, but in the courage to face your deepest fears and emotions. The nights were the hardest. It was then, in the dark and silence, that I could no longer deny the weight of my emotions, my fears. Yet somehow, that darkness became a source of healing, a place where I could finally confront the unknown. There was a time when I thought I had everything figured out, but alone in that hospital bed, I realized how little I actually knew about myself, about life. It was humbling, yet liberating. The pain in my body became a metaphor for the emotional pain I had ignored for so long. In that room, I had nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The only way out was through. Lying there, I learned that healing doesn't just happen physically. Sometimes, the real healing takes place in the quiet moments, when we're forced to sit with our emotions, our memories, and our fears. The isolation of that hospital bed was a gift. It was the space I needed to reevaluate everything, to reassess my life, my choices, and my future. I walked away from that experience with a new perspective on what truly matters. In the silence of that room, I discovered how much I had been avoiding my true feelings, my past mistakes, and the parts of myself I had always hidden. But the silence had a way of bringing everything to the surface. I thought I had all the answers, but in that hospital room, I realized that the only question worth asking was, who am I now? The journey of self-discovery began the moment I embraced my own vulnerability. Every day felt like a lifetime, and every thought felt like a heavy burden. But over time, I began to realize that I wasn't just surviving. I was transforming, evolving, and healing in ways I never expected. That hospital bed was a prison, but it was also a sanctuary. It was a place where I could confront the parts of myself that I had been too afraid to face until I had no choice but to do so. When you're alone in a hospital room, there's nowhere to hide from yourself. All your thoughts, your regrets, your hopes, they come rushing in. But with each wave, I learned to ride the current, to find peace in the chaos. In the midst of the sterile white walls, I realized that life wasn't about avoiding pain, but about learning how to navigate it. The more I allowed myself to feel, the more I healed, not just physically, but emotionally too. There's a certain kind of clarity that comes with isolation. When you're alone with your thoughts, with nothing but time to reflect, you begin to see your life in ways you never could before. The fear of the unknown was overwhelming at first, but in that room, I found something stronger than fear, a deep, unshakable sense of surrender. I learned to let go, to trust that everything would unfold as it should. In the hospital bed, there was no one to impress, no expectations to meet. I was forced to strip away the layers I had built around myself and come face to face with the raw truth of who I was. It's in moments like these, when you're stripped down to nothing but your thoughts and feelings, that you truly understand who you are and what you want out of life. The stillness of the hospital room gave me a chance to reconnect with myself in a way I hadn't in years. It was as if the world outside had faded, leaving me to find my own path, my own peace. Let the message of love spread far and wide. If you cherish love, consider subscribing to our channel. Thank you for your unwavering support on this journey towards compassion and connection. Amen. If you'd like to show your appreciation, you can give super thanks of up to $20. The silence in the hospital room felt louder than any noise I'd ever known. It was as if time itself was waiting for something, waiting for me to understand, to confront my deepest fears and desires, all while the world outside continued its busy dance. In that sterile bed, surrounded by beeping machines and white walls, I discovered a part of myself I had long forgotten. It wasn't just physical healing that was happening. It was the quiet, painful mending of my soul. Being alone in that hospital bed stripped away every distraction. All I had left were my thoughts, and they began to roam places I never expected, reflecting on love, regrets, and a yearning to truly connect with what matters most. As the hours passed slowly by, I realized how fragile life really is. The comfort of routine, the chaos of everyday worries, they all felt so distant. I was forced to sit with myself, and it was both terrifying and enlightening. The feeling of loneliness was overwhelming, yet I learned something remarkable in that space. In the absence of others, I learned how to truly be present with myself. I confronted my fears, my insecurities, and even my deepest desires. There's something profoundly humbling about being at the mercy of your own thoughts, unable to move, to reach out. It's as if the universe holds you still, waiting for you to find clarity in the stillness. Lying there, I began to see the cracks in my own armor. I was no longer just a body in pain, but a mind and spirit being awakened to the truth of my own journey. In that hospital bed, I realized how often I've rushed through life. Every moment spent waiting for someone else's approval, chasing fleeting pleasures, and yet in the quiet of those hours, I finally understood what it meant to truly be alive. Each breath felt like a small victory, a reminder that life is fragile, but also incredibly resilient. I began to see the beauty in the moments I had once overlooked. Small, precious moments that now carried so much meaning. The stillness in the hospital room was deafening. I wanted to fill it with noise, distractions, anything to avoid facing myself. But in the end, it was the quiet that taught me the most about strength, vulnerability, and healing. Every night spent alone in that room became a journey of self-discovery. I thought I was there to heal physically, but what I didn't expect was how much emotional and spiritual growth would come from that solitude. At first, the thought of being alone was terrifying, but with each passing day, I began to welcome the silence as it gave me the space to reflect on what truly mattered in my life, what I wanted, what I needed, and what I was ready to let go of. The hours I spent alone in that sterile room forced me to confront all the things I had avoided. The pain in my body was nothing compared to the emotional weight I carried. And in that space, I had no choice but to face it. I had always been afraid of stillness, but in that hospital bed, I realized it wasn't the stillness I feared, it was the truths it revealed. I had been running from myself for so long, and now there was nowhere to hide. When I was lying there, the world outside seemed to keep moving. People had their lives, their busy schedules, but I had nothing but the hours to myself, and that gave me a clarity I had never known. I spent so much of my life waiting for the next big thing to happen, only to realize that in that hospital room, nothing mattered more than the present moment. I learned to be grateful for every breath, every heartbeat, As I lay there, helpless and alone, I was forced to reckon with the person I had become. I was confronted with choices I had made, paths I had walked, and I finally understood how important it was to take control of my own story. That hospital bed became a mirror for me. It reflected not just my physical state, but my emotional and mental state as well. It was as if I was seeing myself for the first time, raw, unfiltered, and vulnerable. The pain wasn't just in my body, it was in my heart, in my mind. And while I couldn't escape it, I began to realize that it was this pain that would ultimately guide me to healing, to transformation. I thought I was alone in that hospital room, but the truth was, I was never alone. Every memory, every emotion, every regret was there with me, teaching me, healing me, even when I didn't understand what was happening. The walls of that room became my confining space and my sanctuary at the same time. It was within those walls that I learned how to let go of everything I thought I knew about myself, about life, and about what I wanted for my future. In that hospital bed, I came face to face with everything I had avoided. I could no longer run from my own mind. Every thought, every feeling became part of my healing journey, physically, emotionally, and spiritually.